I think you have to take a step back and look at their war strategy and how they have responded, reacted to different aspects of this conflict. In phase one of this conflict, in the first 2 weeks, when you saw US and Israeli operations on Iranian territory targeting ballistic missile infrastructure, military infrastructure, eliminating tier one senior echelons of the military, of the political leadership, there was genuine panic. There was a breakdown in the chain of command. It was only when the regime was able to confine the conflict to the Strait of Hormuz, and also, it believes, it strikes against the Gulf states, that the balance shifted. So there's an important lesson. Whether this is the right one or the wrong one is regardless. This is how the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps leadership, which is at the helm, which is in control of power, views it. Their calculus is that the Straits of Hormuz and the attacks, the unprovoked attacks on neighboring Gulf states resulted in this shift of balance, gave them, in their eyes, leverage over the United States and Israel in the war, and also at the negotiating table. So the goal has been for this IRGC leadership to consolidate those two positions, regardless of whether there's going to be an agreement or not. So if you look at the elite dynamics, which has also been shifting, we see that Ahmad Vahidi, the commander-in-chief of the IRGC, is effectively the most powerful figure in the regime right now. He has recently forged an alliance with another oligarchic clan in the IRGC, the clan led by Mohammad Ali Jaffari, the former commander-in-chief of the IRGC and the current commander of the shadowy Baghiatallah headquarters. Now, Jaffari was the very person who devised the decentralization of the IRGC, the very war strategy it's been using against the United States and Israel. So this alliance between Vahidi and Jaffari will also have significant consequences. And as I said, regardless of whether there's going to be a settlement with the US or not, the IRGC believes, its perception is that two aspects worked well. Closing the Straits of Hormuz, attacks on Gulf states. That's what gave it leverage, it believes. Again, this may be detached from reality. But for them, what this means is they're going to double down on those two aspects, as I said, regardless of whether there's an agreement or not. What does this mean? Hypothetically, even if there's an agreement, expect the IRGC to foment destabilization in the Gulf states, whether that's via cells, via its proxies, whether that's via groups that conventionally wouldn't be regarded as the regime's proxies, groups that on paper are at odds with the regime, but actually the regime has deep ties to, such as Al-Qaeda. So that is here to stay. That permanent conflict, effectively, against the Gulf is here to stay. That's going nowhere. They're the ones making the Iranian decision-making right now. Absolutely. They are the ones who are calling the shots in Iran. This is a very dangerous alliance between Ahmad Vahidi, the commander-in-chief of the IRGC, and Mohammad Ali Jaffari, the former commander-in-chief of the IRGC. Vahidi's background is someone who has been at the heart of the regime's terror operations, not just in the Middle East, but globally. He was the first IRGC Quds Force commander. He preceded Qeshm Soleimani. He is on an Interpol register, an Interpol Red Notice register for his role in the terrorist attacks against a Jewish cultural center in Argentina in 1994. Vahidi's vision for terrorism was far more global in many ways than Qeshm Soleimani. During his tenure, the IRGC carried out attacks in Latin America, rubbed shoulders with Al-Qaeda in Sudan, and they trained Al-Qaeda in Lebanon, as well as deploying men into the heart of Europe in Bosnia during the Bosnian War to train the Islamist Mujahideen. So Vahidi's background, if you call it the Vahidi doctrine, that is rooted in asymmetric warfare, militancy, terrorism. That's where he's built his resume. Mohammad Ali Jaffari is one of the chief strategists of the IRGC. He is the individual, as I said, developed the decentralization of the IRGC, created the IRGC's provincial guard, its mosaic strategy that it has been using against the United States and Israel. So this strategy that he devised effectively means that each IRGC provincial guard in every one of Iran's 31 provinces assumes authority for tackling foreign threats and domestic threats. So whether that's protests, whether that's during times of war. In times of war, it means that the IRGC is not reliant for its decision-making on its central command. So if its central command is targeted, the IRGC's provincial guard can still carry out attacks. That's the exact strategy they have deployed against the United States and Israel in this current conflict. Jaffari also devised and created the IRGC's intelligence organization, which has been involved in terror attacks abroad and suppression of Iranians at home. He has also beefed up the asymmetric capabilities of the IRGC, specifically geared towards the United States. So the merger, this alliance between Vahidi, whose background is in terrorism, and Jaffari, who's really an IRGC strategist, will have dangerous implications, not least inside of Iran, but also, perhaps more importantly, globally. The picture I painted was a lethal one, but if the question is the regime stronger after this war? The answer is no, absolutely not. It is much weaker. Its capabilities have been significantly weakened. As I said, that first phase of that conflict, when the US and Israel were carrying out operations on Iranian territory, decapitating its military infrastructure, targeting its ballistic missile capabilities, destroying its air defenses, a strong regime is a regime that can protect its skies. This regime no longer has that capability. We saw this through the heroic US rescue mission where you had helicopters flying at low altitude on Iranian territory. That's the biggest indicator that the regime has lost its capability to protect its skies. It's even been on record saying that, yes, its air defenses are weak. A strong regime doesn't impose martial law on its population the moment the conflict starts. It doesn't block the internet and cut the internet for almost 90 days. This regime is a weak regime. It has become even weaker in terms of capabilities as a result of the war. However, in terms of the elite dynamics, you have radical ideological zealots who are driven by ideology at the helm. Has that changed before the war, during the war, after the war? It hasn't really changed, but we've seen an acceleration, a thrust towards doubling down in their ideology. They are guided by their ideology. That is something that has guided their wartime actions that would otherwise be completely irrational, make sense within the prism of their ideology. So these individuals aren't mad. They are they're not acting without purpose. There is a methodical process here, but that methodical process, their rationality, is being guided through the confines of their worldview. They have a very different rationality to us in the secular West.